Okay, good evening. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Keisha Rogers, and I want to welcome you to our LaRouche PAC strategic update and discussion for Monday, July 31st. And we have a very important discussion tonight. I'm joined by Brian Lance, and we're going to be talking about the Biden lies, Biden economy, or what Biden is calling himself Bidenomics. And when you think about the word Bidenomics or Biden economics, what do you think about? Are you thinking the economy is going just great? Everything is hunky-dory, and everything Biden says about how he has solved the problem of the supply chain crisis, how he solved the problem of unemployment, how he solved the problems of inflation, and that manufacturing is great, everything's great under Bidenomics. Who believes that? Well, if you do, Brian Lance is going to set you straight tonight and tell you about the lies of Bidenomics and what this economy is really facing right now. And I'm going to get to Brian in just a second here, because I think this is a very important discussion. I mean, all of us, we know about the lies of the Biden avatar, Biden collective, from everything he's doing to the wars in Ukraine, to what he's doing in terms of the lies about his son, about his leading opponent, and going after Donald Trump. And this is why, before I get to Brian, I want to reiterate the importance of what LaRouche PAC is doing with our initiative and campaign and the petition that we're circulating throughout the country to stop the prosecutions of Donald Trump, because we've seen too many lies coming from this administration, the Biden administration, that is targeting not just Donald Trump with the lawfare, the warfare, but is targeting the American people. And you can see that through the insane economic policies and policies of targeting that's coming on the American people's freedoms, their freedom of speech, and so forth. So now I want to remind people of this petition and the importance of it. As we know, the Biden administration, its fraudulent DOJ, has continued to go after President Trump. And this has been with their continued indictments against President Trump. And there was a piece of legislation that was put forth by Congressmember Matt Gaetz. And Matt Gaetz has called for putting an end to the funding of Special Prosecutor Jack Smith. And also there are numerous Congress members, along with Congressmember Matt Gaetz, is also calling for the impeachment of Merrick Garland. And this is extremely important, as we need to go after the people who are behind the lawfare, the warfare, and the prosecutions of President Trump. Because if President Trump is not back in the White House in 2024 with a massive surge in the American population going out and taking charge with the MAGA movement, the America First movement, and those who know that we're facing grave danger under the insane policies of the Biden collective, then we're going to see a nation that's going to be totally destroyed if we don't fight for President Trump's Agenda 47 and stopping these prosecutions. And that is why it's extremely important that you go to LaRouchePAC.com, if you haven't already done so, and sign our petition. We're circulating this everywhere. We want to get millions of petition signatures. Stop the prosecution of Donald J. Trump is the name of the petition. It's at the top of our website, that you will find it there at LaRouchePAC.com. And when this discussion is completed, I will make sure that we have the petition on the YouTube channel for people to go there and sign. And you can also circulate it to your networks on social media. So I wanted to make sure we had that. Now, if you've been following the discussions that Brian Lance has been leading, he has talked about, has done a number of discussions with our colleague Susan Kokinda, and one of the latest ones we actually put in the intro and the invite to this discussion tonight that he did, that I'll make available to people, was entitled Mussolini Joe's Bidenomics versus Trump Agenda 47. And you should go and take a look at that in terms of why Joe Biden, his collective, so forth, sees the Agenda 47 of President Trump, who has committed to increasing the standard of living of the population, real manufacturing, real economy, President Trump sees this as a threat. And what was discussed in that last video is how the Salon magazine called Trump's Agenda 47 fascism, continue to refer to it as fascism. But we're going to talk about tonight what the real fascism is with Mussolini Joe and his lying economy, Bidenomics. So with that, I'm going to turn it over now to Brian, and he'll go through what we're really facing under the Biden economy and what can be done about it, what the solutions are to this crisis. So let me go ahead and put Brian on here for his remarks. One moment.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Brian.
All right. Okay, thank you, Keisha. Well, first I want to say, look, we're here. I think I'm here to talk about the irrepressible nature of the human spirit. That's what Trump exemplifies, and he's made it infectious. And if you've been following his rallies, well, I think everybody has a sense of this. This is a unique individual, an important historic leader for the United States. The first thing that he's emphasizing, really at the start of the Agenda 47 series of videos, there's now over 35 of them. Make sure you watch them. The first one, I think it was December 15th, was on the question of freedom of speech, that without freedom of speech, you don't have a democratic republic. And that he was committed. I mean, he's been fighting against this techno deep state, big tech spider web since before he even got into the White House. But he's committed to undoing this whole apparatus. And he goes through systematically the steps he's going to take to do that. But I want to go to the point of discussion. President Trump is engaging the American people. I mean, this is, in a certain sense, it's awkward for many people, I think, because we haven't done it in a long time. He's engaging the American people in a discussion of the future, where we have to go, what we have to do, what we have to build, what we're going to become. Not just some narrow sense of economics, but in terms of culture, society. And so this is what LaRouche PAC represents. This is what this and other LaRouche PAC events, via these kind of web programs and so forth, YouTube and all the rest, writings on the LaRouche PAC website are about. We're about a dialogue, a discussion. And we hope that you're going to be able to, Keisha and I certainly hope, that you're going to be able to cherry pick some of what we discussed tonight, as well as get a sense of the broader, profound principles, overarching kind of principles that are of consequence right now. But this is, it's more than a two-way street. It's also about how do we talk to strangers, to somebody from across town that we don't know? How do we make sense to them of what Trump and what building back the United States as a great manufacturing superpower, restoring neighborhoods, building the American family again, what all of this is about? How do we open that discussion up? So hopefully you'll get a sense of that in the course of this discussion. And just first of all, I want to just, you've all probably seen headlines like this. This is the Houston Chronicle from last Friday. Era of global boiling has arrived. All right, this is last Friday. This is the big tech, deep state spider web of lies, once again, that we saw with the suppression of discussion around COVID and the available solutions, and also what we've seen, what we're getting in terms of Bidenomics. So I just want to emphasize that this heat wave scare, it's exactly that. We had just yesterday, I believe it was, Just the News, John Solomon's site, quoted the head of the U.S. Oil and Gas Association, the president, Tim Stewart, warning that President Joe Biden appears to be considering and is facing growing demands to declare a climate emergency comparative to COVID. And we have a slide up here to just emphasize a point. Look, we've been here before. I don't want to oversimplify, but this is a record of heat waves going back to 1890. And we've been through these and we've come out the other side on multiple occasions, including in the 1930s. So this is not, we just have to put this kind of thing in perspective. But what, is the lie that this somehow, that this has to be confronted. In fact, there was a Los Angeles Times article recently in which the writer said, what's more important, keeping the lights on 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, or solving the climate crisis? I mean, this is insanity. So Trump is committed to overturning that. We're committed to overturning that. So I just wanted to address that briefly at the start of this discussion, and we can certainly come back to it. But the economy, where do we stand on the real economy, the physical economy, production of the country, the state of our people, of our citizenry? So look, and of course, there's all the rhetoric, soft landing. Oh yeah, everybody's employed. How many jobs do you have? Trying to make ends meet. How many people in your family are working? But anyway, all these jobs supposedly, inflation is going down. Maybe things are moderating. Maybe things are stabilizing. And again, this is just part of the big lie. And that's coming unglued. The American people are sick of this. We see this. Every new legal case that's brought against President Trump, he goes up in the polls. That's the process that's underway. So let's get on with the dialogue and discussion in terms of what's going on. This is not a new normal. This is not a new normal that we're in. First of all, we face tremendous dislocation in the country. COVID onward. COVID, of course, itself, the shutdowns, the deaths. Then we had the pile on of federal monies pumped out in the course of COVID, and then following it, there was the supply chain crises. We weren't producing, we were importing, right? And suddenly nobody could handle the rail system, the ports, et cetera, couldn't move things. And as we tried to put the economy back into motion, it was jammed up. So we had the supply chain crisis, which, by the way, is not over. And then we had the sanctions. Think of Biden's sanctions policy. It's purportedly over the Ukraine war, but the sanctions were actually imposed against the United States and Western Europe in particular. So the combination of this just threw everything into chaos. So we've been under it. We've been in a very chaotic crisis situation in the country. That's what we've got to get out the other side. And President Trump and Agenda 47 addresses that. The first thing that we learned, and it's the most important thing, I think, is that we learned that the problem is what we don't produce. We're not producing. That's the supply chain problems. Why don't people have housing? Why have wages fallen? Wages are down. 50% of wage earners in the United States have lost roughly 8 to 10% of their earning power, the real buying power, since the avatar came into office. All right, this is the housing. The price of houses are up 25%. 25% since COVID. Right? The price of a used car, since February of 2020. This is just Consumer Reports. Okay, their figure. The price of a used car is up 50% since February of 2020. Look, and housing, people know there's a housing shortage. Here we have a grid. This is care of the U.S. Census Bureau. This is the number of starter homes. Look at what's happened. We were producing in the 1970s almost 500,000 starter homes, otherwise referred to as entry-level homes a year in the 1970s. My father and his firm were doing it. They were part of that process. We were building starter homes along with homes for everyone else. We were building about 1.43 million homes a year. That's the average since 1959. Hasn't varied much. But, the population has grown. We've added 60% to our population since 1970. But now we're producing virtually zero starter homes. So where are new families going to get, where are they going to get housing to start a family and grow a family? This is absolutely something we can address. You slap on a capital gains tax on the turnover of housing. You slap a different kind of capital gains tax. Taiwan did this. A 45% tax on any corporate home buyers. That cleaned that problem up right away. House flipping and so forth. You put in the capital gains taxes and so forth, and penalize high rates of turnover in housing. But that doesn't get the houses built. We need 1 million plus homes being built. Most of them now starter homes. In addition to what's being built, we need another 1 million homes a year being built in the United States. That means we need to quadruple the harvesting of timber in our forests. We're now harvesting 1/4 of the timber we were harvesting in the 1990s in our forests. And of course, as you know, the forests are burning down, instead. That's a big help, right? That care of the greenies, right? So these problems can be addressed with national credit, with a new mechanism similar to the savings and loans. We can provide the financing. We can put people in homes. We can grow families. And this is what it's about. Right? It's about families. It's about the future. That's absolutely essential in terms of our thinking. It's not about crunching numbers. And I just want to stress this. Look, the Fed is, of course, has jacked up interest rates now. A mortgage is now 7%. To buy even if you can find one, a so-called starter home, is over $260,000. If you can find one. That's the average, across the United States for a house under 1,400 square feet. But step back and look at this Federal Reserve policy, not just from the standpoint that they've raised interest rates now, but remember the insanity of the virtually zero interest rates, where money was free to Wall Street, free for speculation, and a lot of goofy things happened. And the consequences of this, this bankrupt central banking system that we've got, which has got to be replaced with a Hamiltonian national bank or equivalent, to provide credit into the real economy as opposed to into Wall Street speculation and financialization and equity funds and all the rest. The effect of these policies was to create haves and have-nots. The people got money for free, apparently for free, and then the people that didn't and resented it. And it avoids the issue. And I'll tell you what I'm getting at here in a second. This avoids the issue of building the economy, growing the economy. Take the student loan situation. All these people going to college, all these young men and women going to college, ran up these huge bills. Universities to pay for their campuses have been largely left to just charging the students more and more to get a non-education to a large extent. Well, now they've got these enormous student loans, and the avatar Biden announced and said, well, I'm going to make these loans disappear, 20,000 or more. I'm going to make it disappear. Well, and the Supreme Court came down on that. But think about what happened. You know what's happening now? Starting in October, these former students, graduates and so forth of universities are going to be hit with the average of a $500 bill or more per month to pay back their loans. How many people is this affecting? About 40 million, roughly 40 million people. Many of those people went ahead and, well, if they could, they made a down payment. They took out a mortgage to buy a home. And now they're facing, a payment of $500 or more, significantly more, in response. The other examples, of this, we've got 1 in 4 Americans that are on Medicaid, not Medicare, Medicaid. That number, which is about 90 million people, is going to be reduced. It's in the process of being reduced right now by as many as 15 million people. Well, look, what's going on here? What's really going on is we're not producing. One could give other example. I mean, COVID funds are running out. COVID funds paid for policemen. They paid for waterworks, roads. I mean, cities and states suddenly had money, and they said, okay, look, we're going to try to catch up, on the massive deficit we have in terms of infrastructure we built up over decades. It also went to, vaccines and, the rest of it. But the point is, okay, so the COVID money's running out too. All right, well, but what's not happening? We're not producing. It's not a question of whether, some people should resent it and some people got some free money or whatever. The point now is, and it should have been all along, we got to produce our way out of this mess. We got to build our way out of this mess. And that is the heart of Agenda 47, President Trump's Agenda 47. So another way of thinking about this and talking about it, I think, with other people is, look, if you're pouring out trillions of dollars of money, as we have from COVID up to this day, including now for these just horrendous green energy projects of the Biden Collective, which I'll come to in a second if I have time, just to sum up how disastrous they are. You're pouring out tens of trillions of dollars, but only 8% of your workforce is in manufacturing. 8% today, right? At the height, it was almost 40%. The height was around 1980. All right, 40 million. 40% rather. Excuse me. We've now dropped to less than 8% of our workforce in manufacturing. So look, if you're printing trillions of dollars, but nobody's working, hey, I can tell you those checks are going to be worth nothing. That money's going to be worth nothing. You know, I'm simplifying, but to grasp the point here, this is why Bidenomics, is completely insane. We have the trade deficit. We're this year again, we're going to import close to $1 trillion worth of goods from around the world. We're going to export 2 trillion, but we're going to import 3 trillion. So we're going to have $1 trillion deficit. And I can tell you, China is now, right now, for the first half of this year, roughly, is 13.3% of US imports. Trump got it down to 17%. China is not the problem. The problem is we're not producing. Trump understands that. That's why his reciprocal tariff applied across the board to anyone imposing tariffs on us is the right way forward. But the fundamental issue is we've got to build ourselves back up as a manufacturing superpower. The federal debt. Look, the debt overall of the United States is now approximately $90 trillion. It's 70 trillion without financials, what they call financials. God knows how the Fed figures out the financials part of that. I mean, obviously they're not counting derivatives bets, but if you include that, all of the debt out there in the United States, here in the United States, is about $90 trillion now. We're now facing, within the next month or two, we're looking at a $1 trillion in interest payments on the debt by itself, $1 trillion in annual debt service payments. So this gets us, go back a notch or two there, if you can. There you go. This brings us to the Biden economics, to the heart of it. I want to use a quote. It's not a long quote, brief quote from Brian Moynihan, the CEO of Bank of America. And in November of 2021, in the Wall Street Journal, in an interview, he was asked about financing the whole Green New Deal projects and so forth of the new administration. This was in November of 2021. So Biden had already been in there for 11 months or so, 10 or 11 months. So Moynihan had the following. He said, funding for a carbon-free economy is infinite if there is a revenue stream. In other words, if the federal government prints the money and pumps the money into zero carbon investments, which are also zero productivity investments in a real fundamental sense, we can extend credit infinitely. This is a complete disassociation, as you may already have a sense of, from reality. There are real physical principles in the universe, but you're dealing here with a crowd that deny even the existence of truth. I mean, this is why President Trump emphasizes the question of freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is to dialogue and discuss on the fundamental issues we face. And the basis for a discussion and deliberation among us is that we're in a search for universal principles. We can come to agreement on the basis of principles, that exist. And whether it's in the physical world or the question of the fact that there are boys and girls and there are men and women, and so on and so forth. All right, principles. If you do away with principles about the universe and you say there are no principles out there, we're going to make it up as we go along. That's what Brian Moynihan is talking about. And here we have it in this graph that we have up here now. This is Biden's big manufacturing program. There's no substantial increase in construction, except for some road building and waterworks, because some real infrastructure got into the first infrastructure bill, compromise kind of thing. But everything else is going into batteries and chips. You may not have seen this, but this was a story. There's a doubling of investment in manufacturing construction, construction for actual manufacturing facilities. Well, yeah, okay, here it is. This is from the Budget Committee of the House of Representatives. They did a look-see at this. You may not see the pale lines other than the dark one, but those pale lines, are chemicals, transportation equipment. They're basically flatlined. The only thing that's going up is investments into the post-industrial digital la la land that means nothing in terms of wages, real wages for the American family. It's not the basis for a single wage earner household. It's not going to bring down the cost of cars or houses. It's not going to build houses. So moving on quickly here now through a set of tapes, I just or charts. This is from the Fed. This is the St. Louis Fed. They put out. Some of these are from them. This one in particular. This is industrial machinery manufacturing orders. If you look over to the far right, that's where we are right now through May of 2023. All right. There's no boom in industrial manufacturing orders, machinery orders in this case. It ain't happening. And besides, you can see the up and down and slash and burn that goes on in the industrial sector. If you just think about the consequences of this yo-yo process, this is from 1990 forward, and what the consequences are for families and consequences are for the nation. This is the result of Fed policy. Go on to the next one. Keisha, thank you very much. Here, machine tool orders. What they know how manufacturing technology orders. All right, but this is machine tool orders. As many of you know, machine tools are what you need to build machines. And innovation in the design and development of new machine tools or prototypes for machine tools coming out of scientific work, scientific discovery, is the basis of increasing productivity in the nation. So here, Biden says, oh man, I've created 13 million jobs. Well, no, he hasn't. He says he's created 800,000 manufacturing jobs. No, he hasn't. This is machine tool orders. And you can see it ain't looking good. Okay. This is from January of 1990 to June of 23. It rose again after COVID, as we tried to build back, people clawed back. That wasn't Biden. And it's falling off again. Manufacturing orders are significantly down year to date, 13.6%. On to the next slide. And this is total manufacturing, new orders, total manufacturing. This is just from May 2020 to May 2023, just so, just the last year and a half, okay? This is not a boom. This is not, this is a country that's flatlining at best. And this is including, this is including the green investments into solar and wind, what is junk in terms of the real economy. And I can say also just the same thing in terms of rail transport as a reflection of this. Rail transport, is down 5.3% for the year. It was down roughly an equivalent amount last year. This is intermodal as well as carloads. So we're producing less. There's less demand. And of course, this in part reflects the Federal Reserve jacking of interest rates. After the dropping to zero interest rates that just fueled inflation. Now we're raising interest rates and squeezing out what little there is of the economy. So that's some quick charts. We can quickly look at, commodity speculation. People might have thought, well, gee, prices, normalized a little bit, oil and gas and maybe there aren't the same supply chain problems and so forth. Look, hey, just if you look at them, speculation continues. A little of it dried out because of the high interest rates. Commodity speculators use other people's money, they got to pay for it. But, where is the speculation now? Well, it's lithium, it's copper, it's cobalt. Lithium skyrocketed sixfold starting in August of 2021. There you go for the avatar Biden and the Biden collective. Went up sixfold, it then dropped, plunged. That's speculation, right? You make money on the way up, other people make money on the way down. That's, if prices just stayed up or down or whatever, you wouldn't make money on speculation. But it went down, but it's still up threefold, since August of 2021. Copper's doubled from August 2020. It's still up 75%. It went down some, but it's still up 75%. Cobalt went up through the roof, tripled, and fell back completely, because they think sodium may be replacing cobalt in future battery production. This is all about EVs. It's the new speculation. So now sodium chloride, just caustic soda, is in play, and it's risen about about 75% for caustic soda. Ammonia fertilizer. Anyway, we can go on, but the speculative markets continue. This hasn't all stabilized in any means. And then you go to the banks. Let's get real. That Silicon Valley Bank, Signature, First Republic went belly up. The Fed stepped in, FDIC, etc., and they came up with the Bank Term Funding Program. Bank Term Funding Program. You know how it is. They make up these terms so you can't memorize them. But this program is now essentially permanent. Underwater bonds, Treasury bonds that regional banks and so forth held, that they bought when interest rates were zero. All this money was coming in to be deposited because people were getting COVID checks and so forth, and they were depositing it, and the banks had nowhere to spend it, so they put it into Treasury notes. And of course, those Treasury notes, Treasury bonds, were paying very low interest, 1 or 2% interest. Well, now interest rates have gone up, and they're trapped in those low treasuries. Anyway, without belaboring the point, this Bank Term Funding Program was set up so that they can borrow against their Treasury bonds that are underwater at face value. At face value, to keep them afloat. Well, think about it. This is also a prop to the Treasury market. I'll come back to that in a second. But nothing's been solved in terms of banking crisis. If we move into commercial real estate, we get a sense of that. Office real estate. Of course, people know about, a 50% vacancy rate in San Francisco high rises. But, across the country, it's 17, 18, 20%, and so on and so forth. Office real estate is underwater. Who loaned? Who's the other side of those mortgages on commercial real estate? Well, it's regional banks, local, and some local banks. That's part of it. It's largely the shadow banking system. By that, I mean equity funds, hedge funds, and so forth. You may not know a lot about this. But the point is, this is shadow banking. What does that mean? That means It's non-banking loans. Non-banking loans. It means banks are regulated. Non-banks, that means they're not regulated. This is equity funds. This is people that put out, put out a worm on the end of on the end of a fishing pole, and say, "Hey, come on in, invest in with us. We're going to make you a lot of money." Pension funds have moved into this big time. What's left of big pension funds in the United States have taken their money and moved it into equity funds and other funds that are lending money unregulated into things like office real estate. That's where they went. So it's now clear that yes, there's going to be continued crisis, slow motion crisis in regional banks, and there's going to be mergers like this latest one involving PacWest out there on the West Coast and so on. But the real crisis in terms of this financial side, in terms of zombies, is going to be among these equity funds, and then the fallout from that as they hit big pension funds in California, Texas, and elsewhere. So that's going to happen. That's in motion right now. There's no return to offices. So this is part of the unfolding crisis. And just to come back briefly to treasuries, ask yourself, who's going to buy treasuries? We're going to put out roughly about $1.3 trillion in new treasuries. The U.S. Treasury is they're going to sell. Hey, you got to finance. We're printing money like crazy. You got to borrow money to cover that money, right? You got to back that up with something. They're selling Treasury bonds, 1.3 trillion between now and the end of the year. I'm just, 726 billion were sold between April and June of this year. Another, and then between July and September, 733 billion will be sold. And then on till the rest of the year. This is just from the U.S. Treasury directly itself. I mean, this is just their figures. Who's going to buy this? And this is going to continue? I mean, this is continue. I mean, Brian Mulroney, right? What he was talking about, infinite credit coming from the federal government, that is the Inflation Reduction Act, for example. The Inflation Reduction Act, so-called, passed purely on a party line vote. The Inflation Reduction Act, subsidizing wind and solar to 30 and 40%, batteries to 30 and 40%, and many of the battery producers are coming in here. They're from South Korea, they're from Germany, Sweden, you name it, coming in here to take advantage of 30, 40% subsidies to produce EV batteries in Tennessee and Kentucky and whatnot. The Biden collective just loaned $9.2 billion to Ford to build EV battery plants. I believe it was in Tennessee and Kentucky were the two states. Those workers are going to be lucky to get half of what UAW workers get right now in the Midwest. But this is what Brian Mulroney was talking about from Bank of America in terms of, as long as there's a revenue stream, i.e. from the U.S. Treasury, the amount of credit that can be issued, he said, was infinite. This is a setup for a complete bust. And one of the ways in which this is going to play out, as more and more treasuries are sold, there's no one out there that's going to buy them. As a result of the sanctions policies, countries are deciding, hey, we don't need to hold U.S. Treasury notes or U.S. dollars as collateral anymore. That could be grabbed. Half of Russia's collateral, foreign holdings was grabbed. Half of its collateral, all of its foreign holdings were grabbed. This could happen to us. We could be the next Venezuela, etc. So more and more and countries are looking at this and saying, and looking at the non-existence of a real economy in the United States and the political disruptions and so on, and saying we're gonna put our nest egg elsewhere. So this is a building crisis. It's going to unfold over time. The only way in which that can be handled is with a Trump presidency. Getting Trump in there, turning the United States on a dime, is the means by which we can do that. Go on to the next slide, please, Keisha, if you can. Nuclear power. I want to emphasize this. This is Plant Vogtle in Waynesboro, Georgia. A plant. It's 4 reactors now. Keisha and I were just talking. The third one, number 3, which was just completed, the first nuclear reactor built in the United States in more than 30 years, right, is now almost at 100% output. The 4th reactor, all 4 here are in this picture, beautiful picture from Georgia Power. The 4th power will come online, begin to come online at the beginning of next year, and will come on completely in the course of next year. This will be the largest nuclear power plant in the United States, one of the largest in the world. These AP1000 nuclear reactors of Westinghouse, along with others, including all the potentials of high flux molten salt reactors, the 4th generation reactors, including small modular reactors. This is the future for the United States. We need 1,000 nuclear reactors in the United States. We have brownouts right now, in the Midwest. We've got, they've got an emergency 1 level, last I heard, throughout that PMJ region, extends all the way from Pennsylvania all the way to New Jersey. They have it because there isn't enough power being put online, base load power. Right? Think about it. It's obvious, and we can make this point clear to people. Power should be boring. Build power plants, natural gas, coal, they've got their role as well. Build them. Nuclear power runs 24/7, 92% of the time, including refueling. 365 days a year. Okay, done. Build out the power. Many of us remember as youth, as young people, we never had a power problem in our communities. It was something we didn't worry about. It was just done. As opposed to solar and wind that, may last 20, 25 years, is intermittent, operates on a 30% generating capacity, 30%. 30%, only 1/3 of the time do wind and solar produce power. Right? That's why we got big problems. Go on to the next slide, if you will. I want to just underscore this. 1,000 nuclear power plants sounds like a lot. Well, in 1970, this is the first page of a just short 7-page document by Dr. Glenn Seaborg, the chairman of the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, The Plutonium Economy of the Future. This is October 5th, 1970. And he spells out, as chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission, that by the year 2000, we're going to have the equivalent of 1,000 nuclear power plants running in the United States. He's talking about breeder reactors. This would be, like 4th generation reactors today, right? We were out to do that in 1970. That's what we were committed to doing by the year 2000. We can do it now. It's going to be harder. We've got to upskill the workforce. But energy is the way to do that. We can put tens of thousands of young men and women to work. Women, if they wish to work. Obviously, we want to increase households. We want to grow families. But we can put tens and thousands of new young workers to work in productive jobs, building nuclear power plants, the very power we need to then build out the rest of our industry, to build the supply chains that will be part of a broad new industrial base of the United States. Just keep in mind, when we're saying manufacturing, we're talking about industrial manufacturing. Sure, and you can go on to that slide of Trump. The future is with Trump's Agenda 47. Industrial manufacturing is steel. It's concrete. It's aluminum. It's heavy industry. It's not just producing Campbell soup cans, although that's got its place as well. So that's what the future has to be and can be. I don't know, how are we doing for time here, Keisha? Shall we wrap at this point and open up for question and answers, or do we have a minute or two further? Just tell me what you think.
Go ahead and complete your.
Okay, well, yeah, if I want to just get real quickly, look, the next slide, if you will, just to remind people, how have we progressed? We progressed through as I started out saying, the irrepressible nature of the human spirit. Dan Leach had spoken about this, made a series of presentations borrowing from the poetry of Keats and Shelley to this point. We've upshifted from wood to coal to oil. That didn't happen automatically. Those upshifts were through Ben Franklin discovering the actual nature of electricity. It was the innovations, not just by handfuls of scientists, critical though that was, it was also the innovations that were developed on the plant floors, in the production process itself. And we moved on to nuclear, but it was aborted. I don't know if you have the next slide there or not, in terms of that upshift process, but people get the idea of what I'm talking about. I want to conclude by just pointing out solar and wind, that this is just an enormous trashing of the human and natural resources and productive capabilities of the United States. And I want to draw on a set of studies. I'll mention them very quickly. There's a study by Yoni Hesthammer, PhD, University of Bergen, Vest Energy, did a set of studies on the resources utilized, the raw materials utilized in producing energy. And he says all sources of energy use raw materials that help build them, the plants themselves, and support them, but nuclear power plants have the lowest structural material requirements of all low carbon energy sources. Here's the one I was talking about in terms of these upshifts going from wood. This is Ben Deniston from 2020. Ben did this, drawing on census study and the U.S. Energy Information Agency. So that's a good one to have up there while I'm talking here. But nuclear power utilizes per terawatt hour of power. There's 4 terawatt hours plus a year that we consume in the United States. So that's the per terawatt hour. That's a lot of energy. But nuclear uses 930 tons of material. That's counting everything that goes into the plant's construction, spread out over the production of energy. Per terawatt hour, 930 tons. Wind utilizes 20,260 tons of material, steel, concrete, glass, etc. to produce the same amount of power, 1 terawatt hour of power. 930 tons versus 20,260 tons. All right, that's wind. Solar is 16,456 tons, right, of resources. And think of the manpower that goes into producing those resources. A second window on this. There's very few life cycle assessments, that really look at, well, how much energy goes into producing, say, a wind turbine or a wind turbine field, right? A wind farm versus how much it actually produces going out. But we have a study, it's done of an Abilene, Texas, nearby Abilene, Texas, wind farm that was done at the University of Texas at Arlington. It's titled Comprehensive Life Cycle Assessment of Large Wind Turbines in the United States. And what they found in their study, and they used the windrows at Abilene Airport to keep track of when the wind doesn't blow, to get accurate figures, is that it takes at least 5.9 years. Remember, a wind turbine lasts about 20 years, maybe 25, but it takes 5.9 years just to pay for the energy consumption, the energy inputs that go into manufacturing every component that goes into that wind turbine and putting it up. All right. And finally, there's the 2015 Department of Energy Quadrennial Technology Review. And again, this is just some quick figures here. Again, per terawatt hour, this is a breakdown in terms of total material input. All right. For nuclear, concrete, 760 tons per terawatt hour of material goes into producing a terawatt hour on, averaging it out, versus 8,000 tons for wind, 3,700 for solar. Steel, the amount of steel that goes into producing a terawatt hour of energy output is 160 tons of steel versus 1,800 tons for wind and 7,900 tons for solar. This, now just one final point on this. What isn't talked about in any of these studies is human labor, the labor power that goes into producing these energy sources. That in the case of these lower forms of energy, entropic forms of energy, you're using up, you're cannibalizing literally your workforce and their families and the society's resources when you fold this into the picture. Labor power is essential, as Lyndon LaRouche has always emphasized, essential. The development of labor power, the creativity, the productivity as a consequence of man's continued creativity is what has to be applied. That's the future with nuclear energy. I mean, just in Texas, we have 11 universities with nuclear engineering programs. Abilene Christian University, tiny little college, is building a sodium cooled small modular reactor right now. There's nuclear reactors at Texas A&M and College Station. There's one right in the city of Austin. The average Austinite would be freaked out if they realized there was a nuclear reactor in the middle of the city. But this is just part of the capacities that could be utilized and brought forward to employ and develop a skilled workforce. You can get a PhD in nuclear engineering at MD Anderson Cancer Research University Center right here in Houston at the Medical Center. It's the same around the country. it's all, almost all of it lying fallow compared to what could be grown, what could be developed. So I hope that's painted a picture to you of where we are with the economy, both the real crisis that we have, but also the potential to upshift our workforce, to rebuild with Trump's Agenda 47. And I hope we've broadened the scope of that and the thinking of that and the discussion of that can ensue. Thanks for your attention. So we'll open this up, Keisha.